is Ralph Lewis, and welcome to the panel. Cayman is getting ready to reopen on November 20th, just a little over a week from now. In fact, it will be 2 days earlier than the reopen Cayman was calling for. Clearly, this is welcome news for reopen Cayman, but what will the reopening look like? How have they been preparing for this? Will we have a grand ceremony to mark the occasion of Cayman emerging from a downturn caused by the pandemic? Or do we need special measures in place to ensure that the reopening is not derailed by the current surge in positive COVID cases? And what are the implications of the decision by the CDC in America to place Cayman into category 4 due to the outbreak? There are many questions to ask, and tonight we'll be getting the perspective of the Reopen Cayman campaign. Joining us tonight, Mr. Mike Gibbs, President of the Chamber of Commerce, Mark Langevin, President of the Cayman Islands Tourism Association and General Manager for the Ritz-Carlton, and Woody Foster, Managing Director, Foster's, and representing the Reopen Cayman Group. We also have my co-hosts and analysts, Roy Bodden and Mary Banks. Good night, gentlemen, and welcome to the panel.
Good night.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Ralph, I'm wearing my my poppet tonight, and you're wearing yours as well. Others in the panel as well. Monday is Woody got his wrists. Monday is Remembrance Day. Monday the 15th is Remembrance Day, the public holiday, and these red poppies are things that the Veterans Association used to sell and to raise money for the veterans. So I want to encourage all of our viewers to support the poppies that are being sold every year by the Veterans Association.
Okay. And with that, we're going to say good night to our listeners and viewers. And please like Caymanian Times Facebook page and also share the live with your contacts. There's much to cover on this edition of the panel with our guests from Reopen Cayman. So let's get started. Mr. Woody, hope you're doing all right and enjoying the weather. Now that we have the reopening date next week, Saturday, on the 20th November, what is Reopen Cayman and the Ready to Open campaign doing to help businesses and the wider community to get ready?
Well, the Reopen Cayman campaign really was a group of businessmen who got together to see how we could assist the government and the community at large, if you will, to be able to get themselves ready for reopening the country. It's been a conversation we've been talking about for quite a long time. It's obviously a very emotive topic because you have some in the community who don't believe that we should open and we should continue to stay in our quite safe bubble. And there are some that, businesses that feel that we need to reopen so that they can, get their business going, because a lot of them are living on a shoestring. And that's not just business, that includes their employees who have reduced hours or no hours, as the case may be. And so generally we felt as a group that there was things that we thought we could do to help the community to start to get ready, just to start to think about what it means to reopen safely. And so we have been supporting the government where we could in terms of meeting with them when given the opportunity and giving them our thoughts. And reopening safely or opening safely is, I suppose at this stage of the game, a fairly generic term. What does that mean? People throw it around pretty easily. But in this context, it was from the standpoint of to our visitors who want to come back to our shores. So it's what can the country do in terms of making travel to the Cayman Islands safe as possible so that they could re-enter the community and start spending dollars in our community to get people working again and get businesses going. So that was the genesis of why we came to be and why we've been supporting the Reopen Cayman campaign.
Anyone has anything to add at this time?
Woody, so you all have a pledge that we're asking people to sign. That pledge basically, could you just tell us what it says, and generally whether there's commitment by all of the members then to self-police the compliance with that pledge, and how are you actually encouraging or enforcing that?
Well, we're not enforcing it. It's basically for you to make the pledge as an individual that you are ready, or whether it's as a business or you as an individual. So we're not mandating anyone to do anything. You know, you have to practice your social distancing. We're asking you to get vaccinated because we believe the vaccination is an important part of the process of keeping the country safe and keeping yourselves safe. So it's those basic things. So we're not policing anything per se. And so when you sign the pledge, it's your personal testament, if you will, that you're going to do everything that you can to reopen safely.
Yeah, but as the Bible says, faith without works is null and void, right? So my question is that, I mean, some members I've seen, maybe they're not people who signed the pledge, but you go to certain business places, not yours or any of the panelists here, and you see employees and some managers even milling around the workplace without their masks and stuff. So that's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's the difficult thing, right? Because now you're starting to talk about mandating. And then it's really getting tricky. So, you know, you go up with the human rights thing of personal choice and not being able to force people to do things. And that's again another very emotive topic. So we have not chosen to go that direction. We put out as much information as we can. You know, people can do their own reading, their own research, and we're just trying to help the situation as opposed to force people to do anything, because that gets pretty tricky.
Woody, as I mentioned in my opening, the government chose November 20th, and your group recommended the 22nd of November. Do you think that your planning had something, or your campaign had something to do with the dates that they chose?
Possibly, but if obviously the government was going to reopen, they had a reopening plan. I mean, we've been talking about reopening from last year, just in terms of going through the whole lockdown, working through lockdown, and so you know month after month, and we've been talking about this for quite a long time. And I'm not a politician, and I don't really like politics, but so I'm not giving anybody kudos or going any political direction, but I do believe that the direction that the premier at the time took to lock down the country and keep the country in lockdown was the right decision. And he took a very, very difficult position in terms of going up against business, if you will, to continue to stay locked down. And I believe that was the right thing to do. But I also then believe that at some point in time, we must reopen. And I think that is where the tricky part comes, is that how do we then come out of lockdown and go into a situation of learning to live with COVID? And that's where it gets tricky. And we believe that with the high rate of vaccination that we have, with the amount of PPE and the hospital doing all the things that they have done, we believe that as a country, we've done a great deal in putting Cayman into place to reopen safely. So do I believe that our program had anything to do with the dates? Maybe, but I'm not sure that it really matters, because I mean, we've been advocating this for quite some time, and I think the government has been proactive in trying to find the right time to open and also put the country in a place to where we're in the best possible light in which to do so.
Ralph,
thank you.
may I interject? Ralph, may I
Go right
interject?
ahead.
I think that just to support a little bit what Woody was saying, is the pledge that is done. It's not a formal paper, a contract, but it's a moral obligation. You know, I think that the government has done so much and can do so much. There is only so much resource to inspect people and check people. Businesses, we will talk about it hopefully today, how we prepare ourselves. But eventually, it becomes an issue of personal responsibility here. We heard, for example, Dr. Lee that was sharing how when he went back to England and looking at his elderly, he used the lateral flow test. You know, he took additional measure. And I think that is what Reopen Cayman is about, is asking people to take responsibility for their action, because we cannot continuously expecting regulation, rules, police to continuously get us out of that crisis. It has to be a common effort from everybody together, you know, wanting to go back to a normal life. But there is going to be different directions, but at the end of the day, it's every individual has to take responsibility for their action and act responsibly.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Gibbs, the Chamber of Commerce have endorsed the reopening strategy. How close is Chamber of Commerce working with the group of campaigners in the reopening plan?
Sorry, Ralph, you broke up a little bit on me there. Were you
Yes.
just asking?
Yes.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. The Chamber of Commerce has endorsed reopening Cayman plans and the campaign. And how close have chambers been working with the reopening campaign plan?
Well, we've certainly been talking to them on a regular basis and working with them. We were sort of part of some of the members of the Chamber Council. In fact, obviously, Woody is a past Chamber President, and Mark is on the Chamber Council. So we've got great representation in all of the aspects of this program, so to speak. But we have been, having lots of discussions. Several Chamber Vice President Nelson was also involved and has been involved in the ongoing discussions, and also then from the PR campaigns that and the marketing campaign that Reopen Cayman developed, worked closely with the Chamber, and so that our campaign worked and the government's campaign all sort of tied together to make sure that they were sort of had a consistent feel through all of that. So yes, very much we fully endorse the program, and obviously working very much alongside it and with it to make sure that it comes to fruition.
Ralph, I have a question. Given that we were in an extended lockdown period, and now we're planning to reopen, what are the measures which were put in place or which are in place to ensure that the Caymanian workers who are coming back into the workforce are trained and prepared to take up the positions which will be open and be opening in the near future? Was there an entity responsible for training and reorienting Caymanians so that they would be ready when we reopen to take up these positions that are going to be available?
Would you like me to take that one, Ralph?
Okay. Yes, sure. Go right ahead. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
So, we had many conversations with, as the government came on board back in May and April, and we at the time presented to the government all the priority that we felt needed to be addressed for the reopening. It started from obviously all the protocol that needed to be addressed, all the issue with the aviation, the marketing of all that. And one of the components was obviously the remobilization and bringing people back to work. And obviously there is many components to that. And in the early stage, the government made us set that as a priorities, share your plan on what do you want to do. So that has been addressed back. It was back in June, actually, where we did some presentation.
Yes.
And we partner throughout the summer with actually the DOT, the Ministry of Tourism, the Director of Tourism, the Department of Tourism, but also with work, WRC. We always have to specify that.
Yes.
So we have worked throughout the summers to first collect data, understanding what are all the people. It was not an easy task because there is a lot of workers out there. They were unemployed or collecting the stipend, but we didn't know if they were employed, not employed, if they changed career or not. So there was a lot of data to sort out, but we partnered together with all those agencies. Eventually, we created in the summertime some, I don't say career fair, but meet the professional, because career fair sometimes it sounds like it's not very productive. So where actually all the hotels were there, water sports, restaurants, and to meet all those people, they were currently unemployed, to understand what their plan. So we had all that plan ready. Recruitment was starting. So we have done all that legwork, and the most important is we have built strong relationship between and establish how do we continuously balance with our communication with work, and how do we evolve, because it's a moving target. And fortunately, all that work, I mean, hundreds of, at that time, hundreds of people were interviewed and so on. And fortunately, it was all geared to an opening date of October 15 at the time. And that
Yes.
all plan went and smashed. So it's kind of a, right now, everything was done, everything was in place. We have the name of all the people they were looking for position. Job offer were extended with a date, open date, because obviously we didn't know exactly the date of the opening. And now we got to start back the process because we are looking at that 20th. But it's a different situation that we see today than what we were looking when we were looking at the summer. When we were looking at the summers, we were looking for a very exponential opening because our book was full for Christmas. That every condominium, every hotel was packed. And unfortunately, the situation has changed. So at the time, we were very pressed by the time to figure out how many employees can we bring out in such a short time. And believe me, we really speed up the process. Unfortunately, now the situation has changed because after the announcements of September 14th, all our books have been cleaned. All the reservations we had in the books are gone. And not only that, is the airlines are gone. So we are in a different situation and we have to restart the process with different priorities because it doesn't make sense to do the same that we did this summer.
Thank you.
But it was set as a priorities from the get-go. That's what I wanted to share. That was a long answer, but that was the point that was set directly by the government and that we took, for the Hotel Association, the Tourism Association, we took that as heart. That was the first thing that we obviously had to demonstrate to the government is how we're going to, make sure that every Cameroonian has an opportunity to find a job.
Okay, thank you. And Woody, I think you had something to mention.
Well, there was some other things going on as well, but this would have been on a much smaller scale than Mark is talking about. And his was also very tourist specific, where what I was going to mention was much smaller and not tourist specific. And this was for some retraining for people in the tourism industry to get other jobs elsewhere. And I know that from my position on R3, where we sponsored UCCI to do some self-training, Inspire Cayman. So entities like that who are doing some retraining. But in terms of a larger scale, Mark's answers would be more accurate.
Okay. Thank you, Woody. Okay. Well, we're going to switch gears.
Well, I've got to ask Woody a question. Do you think, let me just preface it by saying that, we look at like a faucet, right? A spigot where you put it all the way on or all the way off. But if you turn it towards the middle, a middle flow, or with a reopening and the community spread, do you think, Woody, that there may be a need to look at some calming measures, such as looking at alternative shopping days that we had in the dark days of the lockdown? Looking at closure of bars and nightclubs by, say, 11 o'clock p.m., those kind of things, because those will, like I said, calm the spread and calm the crowds. And I just want your thoughts on that.
But when you said calming, I took it as calming people's fears. And I said, well, I think that would actually do the opposite personally. But in terms of you're talking about calming the spread as opposed to people's fear, you're arresting the spread or slowing it down.
Managing.
I don't know, because I mean that's the thing with spread. It's so exponential, right? So 1 turns to 2, turns to 4, turns to 8. It happens so quickly, and I don't know. I don't know that would be the right thing to do, to close bars and go back to alternate shopping days. I would really have to give that a lot of thought, because I hadn't thought that would be the right thing to do.
I didn't say close bars, and I said 11 p.m. closure or something like that, where you have, because obviously you go to a bar and you get into a couple of drinks, you can't wear your mask, and you drop your guard and you're right close contact with people, and the longer you do that, the more contact you have. So that's just something to kind of like say calm this rather than going full speed ahead and then crashing.
Fair enough.
Ralph, if I might, let me ask this question. Given that the CDC has us on level 4, how much emphasis are we placing on attracting visitors from the traditional visitor base, which is the United States. And this is particularly in relation to the hospitality industry.
Okay,
So
if
how are
I,
we-
yes.
How are we geared for any effect
Yeah.
the CDC that emanates from the CDC placing us on level 4 and American Airlines not coming to the jurisdiction in the immediate future?
I'm going to hold that question till we reach Mr. Mark. I think he can address that when and he make his other presentation a little later on. But we want to switch gears. So I'm not going to forget you, Roy. We're going to go to it, but let me go to Mr. Mark. Yes, we want to switch to Mr. Gibbs to get some information about the Chamber of Commerce. What is the Chamber's Ready for Business webinar series? Can you elaborate on it, please?
Absolutely, Ralph, and obviously thank you. And it's certainly good to be here to have the opportunity to sort of get the news out to the listening public, viewing public that maybe haven't heard anything about it as yet on social media, etc. So the Ready for Business webinar series is something that alongside the Reopen Cayman campaign, we sort of as the Chamber worked closely with government to develop this series to really help the business community sort of be ready to, and the wider community to be ready to coexist with the COVID-19 pandemic. These is a series of 5 webinars that start. The first one is tomorrow, and they are free for anyone who wants to attend. It's on Zoom, but you do need to pre-register, and you can do that at the Chamber website, which is caymanchamber.ky. They're 1 hour webinars. I've got some notes here. I'm just checking, making sure I cover all the appropriate points here. So yeah, we're starting tomorrow, and then they'll run, won't be only on Monday, but then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. And obviously details of all of these webinars can be found on the Chamber website, so caymanchamber.ky. So the one tomorrow is supporting employees in times of uncertainty. Obviously, the road to recovery will bring many changes and a level of community and workplace anxiety as we learn to live with the sort of coexisting with COVID. So this, obviously will require some businesses to adjust, having people working from home part-time, having sort of alternate shifts, and really just overcoming the barriers and the anxiety that go along with that and dealing with the various work practices. So the session tomorrow is being done it's at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and the speakers will be Dimna Carton, community psychiatric nurse with the HSA, along with Shannon Seymour from the director of the Wellness Center. So they will be doing that session tomorrow. And then we have sessions next week, a sort of best practices and protocols for safety in the workplace. There's one for tourism, and that one is on Tuesday at 3 p.m. And that will be done and hosted by the senior sort of members of the Department of Tourism and representatives from Public Health. And then the following day on Wednesday at 10 a.m., we have sort of the best practices and protocols in the workplace, pretty much to cover the service industry, the office and retail industries. We're combining those into one session, really just looking at the health and safety practices and making sure that that obviously the various safety measures for the public as well as the employees are in place. And those that third one, the office and service and retail, will be done. Mr. Cliff Robinson from Environmental Health, Mr. Timothy McLaughlin from Public Health, and Therese Perhay from Public Health will be doing that one. Then we have an employer's HR guide to coexisting with COVID. And I think this is going to be one of the key ones, because HR considerations is one of the most challenging aspects of dealing with this in the workplace. and we need to learn how to deal with it and how to deal with our staff appropriately. So there are many questions from our members in the chamber, and this webinar will deliver current legal understanding from the Labor Act, and that will be conducted by Chief Officer Wesley Howell from the Ministry of Border Control and Labor. So either Sean Peridot or somebody from her team. She's the Deputy Director of Work. And then Miss Laval Linwood, Deputy Director of the Department of Labor and Pensions. So again, we think that's going to be a very well-attended seminar, and there's a lot of questions already coming in on that one. So that's on Thursday, the 18th at 10 a.m. The last one is an employer's guide to applying for government assistance. And there are several programs and loans and grants under the government assistance program out there, and talking also about government fees and exemptions and other kind of assistance to businesses and retraining as well. We're still trying to finalize the time and date on that one, but it will be before the end of day Thursday of next week, and just trying to finalize the speakers, but there'll be more towards the end of the panel. So those are the main sessions. The details are all up on the Chamber website, as I say, and you can go on now and register for those free sessions.
Okay.
So that's pretty much where we are on those programs.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Before we ask Mario if he has a question, our HR expert, are those webinars going to be available after next week? We just have about 1 week to go, and I'm concerned that many of our business owners may not be able to attend some next week, but will it be further days?
I'll double check on that, Ralph, but I believe that they will all be recorded and they will all be available to be viewed from the Chamber website.
Okay, very good. Okay.
Yes, thank you. I just want to congratulate the Chamber for doing that, and with all the partners that you're working with, Mike. Now on the show, on the panel, we have been the last 7 weeks questioning and agitating about communication, the government doing better communication, reaching out to stakeholders, doing tabletop exercises, scenario planning exercises, and putting out guidance notes. But gladly, over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, they've started to respond. I mean, I know there's a lot of work behind the scenes, but communication is a hell of a thing, as they say. And so that's very, very important. So I'm very happy to see the government and its various arms starting to get their act together in terms of PR and communication. But I have a question for you as Chamber of Commerce President, in terms of the capacity and resources that are available within the country. For example, we have the program board, we have public health, we have Travel Cayman. Those are kind of the frontline troops in all of this. But things like testing, the lateral flow, monitoring of visitors, enforcing safety protocols, monitoring and enforcing the isolation protocols, prosecutions and all that. All of those very important parts of the battle plan. Do you think that there is sufficient resources dedicated and geared up to execute all these things that need to be done, or are we going to proceed and wait till we get into a crisis and then we have a situation to deal with as a crisis? What was your general thought? I mean, like I said, I'm encouraged that we're moving in the right direction, but there's still a long way to go.
That's a very key question, Mario, questions, I should say. And obviously there are many people who are more qualified to answer the specific aspects of that than myself, but I will give you my general views. And I think, would there be more resources lined up for this? Possibly. Have we made significant progress from where we were a few months ago? I think absolutely. I think even the last few weeks with the outbreak and the mobilization and the addition of resources at HSA, I think they've done a good job. I think we've seen the progress that they have made. Now, obviously, there has been some delays in getting test results out, and we know that's be causing some concerns. But then I think actually today I saw that Health City have just launched, they're starting 7-day-a-week testing at their Camana Bay facility from extended hours every day, and committing to getting results out within 4 hours or something along those lines, I believe is what I saw. So I think there are more resources being mobilized, both with the private sector working alongside the public sector. And I think that's really a key part of how we're going to get through this. I think also, obviously, the resources that maybe are in Travel Cayman, who are doing a lot of work on monitoring people coming in for quarantine right now, will have a reduced load on that side of things, and maybe be able to then switch some of their priority to assisting other areas and that type of thing. So I think it'll be a fluid situation as those resources can be reassigned. But we obviously need to make sure that that first impression of our tourists when they arrive at the airport, and the way they're treated, and the way we treat them going through is absolutely key. And we need to make sure that the whole focus of our emphasis has to be on making the reopening as seamless as possible, and really showcasing the whole sort of Cayman kind approach to all of this, and really supporting each other as we get through this process.
Mike, thank you for that. Last week we had Shamari Scott on the panel. He made a wonderful guest, and we learned a lot of things. There are many small business owners who are concerned that they may get left behind. Could you emphasize how the Chamber is gearing up to helping small business so that they don't get left behind, that they can look forward to support from the Chamber and whatever, in addition to those programs that you mentioned?
There are obviously, if you look at the profile of the Chamber itself, of our membership, I believe it's something like 74% of our members have less than 25 employees. So the majority of our membership is made up of the small and micro businesses and up to sort of medium-sized businesses. But obviously we have a lot of larger ones as well. But so a lot of the emphasis of our efforts and our training and our advocacy, which is obviously one of the key things that the Chamber does, is advocating is for those small members whose voice would otherwise not be heard. A lot of what we do is on the education side and that type of thing. We're also in discussions with a couple of people as far as trying to help source, some of our smaller members help source the lateral flow tests at a, almost sort of a bulk buying discount rate, that maybe the Chamber can help its smaller members do something along those lines. So we're really trying to, we're there for our members, and Will Pinot as the CEO has many of them calling him on a daily basis and reaching out, and the staff at the Chamber office do a great job in really reaching out and helping and offering support to the members in that regard.
Thank you. Do any members of the panel have any other questions for Mr. Mike?
Yeah, I do. In terms of enforcement and prosecution of breaches, Mike, we've had some breaches, probably more to come, and a lot of them that we've had have probably not been reported or people have been charged. But generally, are you happy with the level of cases going to court in terms of breaches of quarantine and related matters?
Obviously, a very complex question behind the scenes, Mario. As far as there, I know a number of cases have not been proceeded with through lack of evidence, or definitive evidence. So I think in the public view, maybe there's, well, why have they not been prosecuted, and what do we need to do differently? There was obviously a public profile earlier last year when the jet skier was down and was prosecuted, and they said, well, we managed to do that very well, and ended up almost being a positive for us, even when she went back to the US and was a good advocate for our strict rules and enforcement at that time. So I know there was speculation that we should recruit her to the Department of Tourism going forward at that point. Now, obviously, then, obviously the volumes of people, in quarantine since that time have increased. The level of monitoring has to be, and the level of information that needs to be provided to successfully prosecute a case is obviously challenging. And that really is something for the police and the courts to be focused on. So to be honest, I don't think I'm qualified to really comment. I think it would be nice to see 1 or 2 cases successfully prosecuted to send the right message. But how difficult that is, I really don't know.
Okay.
Ralph, I just have one observation that I would like to share at this time. I think that where possible, we should de-emphasize prosecution. Not that we should let up our guard and our watchfulness on policing the society. But I think what we should do is promote responsible behavior and respect for the protocols, respect for each other, respect for ourselves, by wearing the mask, by keeping the social distance, by adhering to responsibly when we have to go about in public, and don't make any unnecessary or risky trips or indulge in any risky behavior, because what we don't want to do is to congest the court system with a plethora of prosecutions as a result of people behaving irresponsibly. And we don't want to let them believe that they can get away by behaving irresponsibly with a prosecution that sometimes may take weeks, if not months, before it comes to trial, and place the emphasis rather on education and responsible behavior and being good citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Okay, Woody, go ahead.
I would say largely as a community, we have that. Speaking from, we have 6 locations, and so we are on the front line and have to deal with that whole mask and hand sanitizer situation on a daily basis. And I would say that largely we have almost no problems with that. So as a community, I think Mr. Roy is correct that is we should preach that message. And I think largely Cayman does follow through on that. There are a few who do not. And at that point, I think we should be, just like a good parent, stern with and follow through on what we say we're going to do. So we should put rules in place. And to Mario's question, should we prosecute? I believe that we should, at the point to where it gets to the courts. If it reaches that far, we should do what we say we're going to do. Because in my mind, that's part of being good parenting. But we try not to get to that as a good parent by leading by example, having a good message, and following through on that. But I would just like to give the country kudos for pretty much doing the right thing.
Thank you, Woody. We're going to have to get back on track right now, but we're going to have some more time for questions after. But I know that there's a question pending, and we wanted to move to Mark at this stage. And as business leaders, what have CETA been doing in your roles and businesses to prepare for the reopening, Mark? And then you can also respond to Mr. Roy's question about the CDC's upgrade to level 4 for the Cayman Islands.
Let's start to the first question, and then I can go to the second question. The first one is we have been preparing for the last 20 months. So it's not the lack of preparedness, believe me. We have had a continuously conversation way at the beginning, back at the origin. We were working closely with the Department of Tourism to try to develop all the protocol of sanitation back in 2020. And we continuously have had a communication. We talked about communication earlier, and we maintain that. Obviously, in the last month, things have accelerated. And especially, as you know, most of us, the leaders and Chamber of Commerce, we were called at some point by premiers and to share about the readiness plan and to show all the part and how he asked us to try to help, obviously to complete all the small tasks that needed to be done in that plan, because it's a very comprehensive plan with key priorities. And under each priorities, there was, key actions, ownerships, deadline, accountability. So very detailed, but it was a magnitude. So the beauty of, being ready is that when the government finally set the calls, it was just a few days after the announcement was made. I think it was on Friday, October the 20th or so. We were ready and just waiting for the phone call. And, we got a phone call from Rosa Harris, the director of tourism, and we just ran with the ball, and we score many goals. There was a list of things that they asked us to help them to support on how we're going to do. It was anywhere from the updating all the sanitation and the PPE protocol in our resort, in the restaurant, in the water sports, and so on. But it was also how do we deal potentially, how will we deal if there was a tourist positive? What will we deal if there was an employee positive? The usage of the lateral flow test in our resort. How will we use that to prevent mass spread or transmission? What will be the guest testing protocol, since we heard the 2, 5, 10, how are we going to do that in our hotels? What about the airport transportation? We also had to address, all the pre-arrival communication with the guests. What were our suggestions? So we were not, and the list goes on and on. We talked even about deployment of Cayman Airways to support better the destination, while we knew that the other airline were not coming until 2022, and so on and so on. So we had a long list to do, and the beauty of and the power of calling into the private sectors is that we have amazing communication among each other. We have been working for the last 2 weeks, and it was actually the first week was like pretty much my entire calendar was with conference call like we have right now with different members, talking to people from water sport, talking from hotels, talking for restaurants, because every sector is different, and we cannot make one rule fit all. So it was very detailed, and it was very well coordinated by the entire Department of Tourism. They deployed the entire team to actually coordinate and all those meetings, taking notes. And then it was not just a one meeting. There was like, follow-up meeting 2 days later, follow-up meeting the next week. So we were able in, I would say, less than 10 days to actually complete an entire, protocol book preparation for all those eventuality that then they take back. It was our recommendation. We certainly have no power into the government, but it was our recommendation as a private sectors on what would we do in those cases. And that was presented back, or is being presented now, I am not sure, back to the HSA in some cases, or the cabinet, or the Minister of Tourism. So anyways, at this point, we provided all the knowledge, the experience, and all the details to make the plan works. And now we are just waiting for feedback. And we are hoping that, if we are lucky, they adopted everything, but I'm assuming that there will be question and back and forth at some point if there is point that they will want to do something better or different. So it was very, very powerful demonstration of how teamwork was.
Yes.
That's something, as I said earlier, we started in the summer first working around the entire recruitment piece, putting all those agencies together. Now we were talking with the Department of Tourism more specifically to develop all those. We had meeting and incorporating Cayman Airways and the airport. So again, when we put all those people together in the same room, and I'm talking about virtual room most of the time because we have not met,
Yes.
but suddenly it's amazing the power that came out of those meetings and the results that was achieved. And again, I hope that in the future we continue, because it's a very fluid environment. Right now we're on phase 4 and we were only talking about phase 4, but eventually there is phase 4A, B, C, D, and maybe phase 5. There is going to be some, and we are certainly hoping that the demonstration we made in the last 10 days will serve for the future to show, okay, we are here to help you. We are not here to cause problem, to just complain. We actually have the ability to provide solution and to do it, with amazing resources.
Yeah,
Thank you, Matt.
we have 8 days. We have 8 days to go, Mark, right?
Yes.
And so you've had a lot of discussions. I hear you talking about all the plans and all the strategies that you've passed on to government. But are they actually, when are they going to publish all these things? Because things like the protocols, like you mentioned, you mentioned 2, 5, 10, the second day, 5th day, and 10th day, I think is what you mean. So when is it that all that stuff is going to come out? Because we're not going to see a huge influx of people on the 20th, I don't think. But it's going to start, right? But still, you're going to have these plans dusted, approved, promulgated to society, and people have to have operational things in place to do it. So I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that all this stuff is good, but we got to get it out to the public in reader-friendly, bite-sized pieces so people can digest it and be able to know what to do.
What I would like to see, Ralph, if I might just interject
Yes,
here.
I would like you to ask Mark your question as well too, so he can just respond to that. We've been waiting for that answer.
So you were talking about the CDC announcement?
Roy, go ahead, please.
Yes, I was saying what I would like to see is a joint effort before we open. What I would like to see is a joint effort, like something like a joint communique, which features the government, the chamber, the Open Cayman or Reopen Cayman Committee, and the Tourism Association. Come to the public and say, this is the plan. Here's a joint communique. Here is how we see this unfolding before the opening on the 22nd. Is there something like that planned to occur so that the whole nation then can know what to expect and can be prepared to cooperate and to assist in whatever way we can individually or in our various groups and communities?
All I can tell you is that it did happen. And I'm just talking in the name of tourism and under the Department of Tourism, but I do recall that in the plan that they presented us during that Thursday evening meetings, there was every sectors. There was, a sector for all the health, tourism, transportation. Everybody was represented, and I am assuming, but again, I don't know, that everybody had the same core that we had at the CETA, which is help us, develop all those points. So obviously, it was a huge work. We did it very fast. We deliver on promise. And at this point, obviously, the board in the camp of the government to figure out how they're going to publish that and make it available and easy to, as you said, digest for the community. But it's a very, very complex document because there is so many points. And as I said, even the sample as a sanitation and PPE protocol could apply differently for different size business. So I can promise you that the collaboration has existed between obviously all those entities of private sectors and the government. Now, when they publish, it is obviously their right and their prerogative to make decision. We don't make decision. We propose ID solution, and they will publish at some point. Obviously, one of the things we talk about the 2-5-10, it used to be 2-6-10. And during one of our early conversation, we said, but it doesn't make sense. Most of our customers have a 6 or 7 day stay. So can we move it one day before? And boom, it was actually changed like that. So there might be, that's why I think it will not be fair to say, let's publish it today, because we need to, review how all that work together and then eventually be published and that people can see. But what we have to accept as a rule of engagement, that things have to change all the time, because the situation is going to evolve. Even in the last months, the situation has evolved. The whole crisis of community transmission started with the kids. Now it's everybody, every industry. So the rules that was good 2 weeks ago, it's different because it's a different environment. So I think we have to accept that it's not a black and white document that's going to be for a lifetime document. We have to accept that they will continuously have to change those rules.
Okay, thank you, man. How will the change by the CDC to level 4 affect how we move forward?
May I say, insignificant. It is the business travelers, all the people coming from the US. they are not really looking at that. I can tell you because I used to work at the Ritz-Carlton St. Thomas before. St. Thomas, who has a level of vaccination that is 30% or 40% and has, obviously a much different situation, and people still go. So it's the CDC changing 3, 4 is not going to impact the customers and the American. They are used to do that, and you say it. People go to the ball game. People move on with their life. They're adapting. They know what to do and how to do it. Wearing the mask, not wearing the mask, using sanitation. So it's not. There is other issue that we currently have. They are much more impacting our business, such as obviously the limitation with unvaccinated children to not being able to come on the island. Obviously, for the holiday season, that's not very, that's not conducive to business, or the fact that there is no airline in the immediate. So there is some other issue. They are much more dominant as far as what is impacting our business. The CDC, change in rating, it's significant. And again, the doctor said it this morning, it's going to be a wave. It's going to be, for a month or two, and then it's going to go down. Every destination went through the same process. We were just closed and we were waiting for it, and now it's here. So it's our turn. The good news is we are vaccinated, at a high level. So we most likely will not have some of the negative consequences of people dying in high numbers like they've done in some other destinations. So I think the good news is even if we go in wave as far as how many positive cases we are better prepared than every other destination.
May I ask you a question, Mark? At the Ritz-Carlton, how do you propose to administer the lateral flow tests, and who will do it and who will certify it at your hotel for your guests?
Okay, for the guests. So the guest, if you look at I was checking the US CDC requirement to go back to the United States. It has to be, countersigned, because it can be actually a US citizen can go back in the States with a rapid test. The lateral flow test is acceptable as long as it's signed by a health practitioner or something like that. So it's a very easy process. For us, there is plenty of health practitioners on the island. And I think actually some of the hotel already started. They have actually some in their lobby or in the meeting rooms, and people have an appointment. It takes 10 minutes. People sign a paper and they are ready to go back, or on vacation or on their next flight. It depends on which day. So I think that's the easiest one to follow up, and we'll have a tracking. So that's an easy one.
As I read in one of the newspapers the other day, where Turks and Caicos, they train their spa workers to conduct these lateral flow tests.
Well, it could be a possibility, because technically on the island, everybody who works on a spa is qualified as and you know that because you work in labor, as a health practitioner, since we have a license as a health practitioner. So it could be a solution. But again, we prefer that our therapists concentrate on what they do best, which is giving wonderful massage and facials and so on, and not sign a paper. So I think it will be probably best for us to hire a professional to do that versus wasting a great talent just to sign a paper saying that you have a positive or negative.
No,
Thank you, Matt. Great response. Woody, you got to come to you. You've been quiet for a while, and we're running about 8 minutes before we have to say goodnight. But we've seen an increase in the number of positive cases. How is it impacting your business and similar businesses with those people having to isolate with their families?
It's making it difficult. It's not unmanageable, but it's difficult. I think on any given day, we probably have 25 people or thereabouts out of commission. We have roughly 725 staff. So generally we have enough coverage, but of course, those 25 people, that doesn't include people who are already on days off, people who are on vacation, people who are on sick leave, all of the general runnings of the business. So it's painful, or it can be painful. And then, of course, it doesn't happen equally. So you could have none on any given shift, and you could have 5 on another. So it just depends on how it falls. Like at one store, we had 2 managers out at the same time. That was extremely difficult because there's only 3. So we had to move managers from another store, and so it's tricky, but it is not it's not catastrophic. And I think as Mark alluded to, and as we've alluded to on the show, having the lateral flow test has made it much easier, because if it was prior to the lateral flow test to where people then had to stay at home because somebody else was positive, that would have been catastrophic. Like we had following the Georgetown primary situation where everybody in an entire school had to go home for 2 weeks.
Yes.
That was just unmanageable. And that would have, in essence, closed the country down. We wouldn't have had to go into lockdown.
Mike, thank you, Woody. Mike, can you add to that, please?
I think the point that Woody has made, I think the lateral flow tests is definitely a game changer, and the protocol that government has established for allowing, one person to be isolated in a house and others still to go on about their work and their daily activity is key to us keeping the country going and getting through this as we move forward. It's going to need a lot of cooperation from all of us in whatever business line, or whether it's government or the public or private sector. We've all got to work together, and things will change. It's a very fluid situation as we move forward. And if we work together, we can come through this. And really just, I actually managed to get off Ireland earlier last month, just over to the UK to see my mother and my sister, who I hadn't seen for 2 years. And it was a breath of fresh air to be over in the UK. I was a bit apprehensive about going, in all honesty, at first, but it was breath to see how even though they've still got, a good number of cases happening, most people follow the protocols. They take responsibility for their actions, but they just get on with their life. They're going about their business, and everything, they're coexisting. And I think that's where we need to get to. And we've just got to catch up. And we're coming from trying to go from 0 to 100 in a much shorter period of time than a lot of other jurisdictions. But we can do it. I think we can all work together and get there.
Okay, well, we're down to our final 2 questions from my co-hosts, and I'll give Mario for this next question.
Yeah,
Mario, your turn.
Yeah, I just want to ask either of the panelists, but maybe all they could chime in. Like, what kind of increase do you see for Christmas this year? Generally, what's your forecast for the percentage increase that we'll see in tourism compared to 2019, which was a bumper year? But any kind of forecast or any crystal ball that you want to suggest that you may see?
I think that one, it's the tourism. That's an interesting point. Is as we bring back tourism, people should not fear tidal waves of tourists arriving, because right now because of the many limitation that we have on the island due to the fact that people cannot come with unvaccinated children. 2 is because there is no flight. So, it's going to be trickle down. People are rebuilding. Most of the large hotels will maneuver between, 15 to maybe 30% if they are lucky. But right now it's very difficult to come. We have customers, they say we want to come back, and then they cannot find a flight, or the flight is not at the right day where they were combining with what they want to come. And then after that, they realize the children things, and then, all the restrictions. So we are not going to have, we cannot even compare to 2019 because it will make us cry. So it's going to be very dismal level of business, okay. And as we are going to move. So I think the first people they are going to come is the people they are the most loyal to our destination, which are the residence owner. We have a lot of people who have investment on 7 Mile Beach, and I think they are the first one. They're probably going to come as soon as November 20 comes, pick up the flight. They will find their way through Miami, New York, or Tampa. They will find their way to go there, sleep overnight, pick up the plane, and come. And they will come 2 to 3 weeks potentially, or longer. So those people are going to be essential to our economy, because it's going to bring back some new, fresh dollars in our economy, in our restaurants, in our water sports, at the grocery store. Mr. Woody Foster will be happy. So I think that first wave is going to be the one that is going to potentially come back first until the holiday season. And later on, we have so loyal customers who come in our resort, but like the villa and condominium, also business were related around the multi-generation family. Usually during the holiday season, what we have is we have a 3-generation, grandpa, parents, and children coming together to celebrate the holiday. Well, obviously, it's not going to happen. And the problem is those people, quite often, they were the one renting all those villas and condominium around the island. And right now, those, they won't be able to come because not too many people have children below, many children are from 0 to 12, or there is a sibling somewhere. So it's going to be a very limited audience. So the way we are seeing is probably an entry in a game somewhere on the 10 to 20%, potentially around the festive, if we are lucky. And then the next one is probably going to be stabilized around that level, around January, because unfortunately, right now, there is a lack of trust of the airline, lack of trust of the customers, lack of trust of the, the travel agent, the meeting planners. So, it's going to take time, and they're going to have to, when we hit the mark of November 20, then people are going to believe it, that we are open. So, and the next steps is going to be, when is the government going to announce that at certain point, the children can travel with vaccinated parents? That is going to certainly help us to recover faster. The next step for us is to be ready for President Day week, in February. So, while we're going to stay somewhere in those 20 to 30% in the first, January, we see that we will potentially grow, hopefully, if everything falls together at that 50% mark or above, at that level. And then there is a next big for us pictures is going to be spring break. Spring break is a very critical time of the year. It starts on March 10, finish on April after Easter and Passover. So it's 6 weeks of, usually we run 90 to 100% occupancy. We won't be able to go there. And for another reason that we need to start to talk about is obviously remobilization of staff. But that's another subject for another show, because I can talk an hour about that one.
I know. Well, thank you very much for being so straight and honest with us. And of course, we want to have you. But I'm going to give Roy the opportunity to ask a quick question of any of the panelists. Roy, go ahead, please.
If you were, and this is for either of the panelists or for all of the panelists, if you were asked to give a message to the working class Caymanian people as to what they could expect when things open out, what would that message be?
Take the opportunities. There are opportunities out there. Upskill yourselves, apply yourselves, and move up the ladder. There's lots of opportunity.
Mike?
I absolutely agree with what Woody just said. I think as we open, though, we need to make sure that everyone, if they haven't already, go out and get vaccinated, take responsibility for their own well-being, and really go out there and clearly take advantage of the opportunities that are there. Because now is that if they want to get themselves a job and upskill, now is the time to do it. Their jobs are out there, employers are looking for them, so they need to take responsibility for finding something, and because government's not going to be able to keep paying that stipend forever. It's going to stop very soon once we open. So I think there's a lot of people who are going to suddenly realize, oops, now what do I do? And I think people need to start thinking about that now.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I really appreciate you coming here. We run out of time, but I'd like to invite you again, maybe in about 3 or 4 weeks after we've opened the borders, to give us an update on what has gone right and what has gone wrong, or what needs to happen. On behalf of Mr. Roy and Mr. Mario, thank you for coming, and I'd like to thank all of our viewers and listeners. Don't forget to like the Facebook page and share the link, and watch us again next week, Thursday at 8 p.m. We'll be right back here, and we hope to talk about the government's preparedness for the opening borders. Thank you very much, and good night.
I'm ready to reopen Cayman because it's time that our friends, family, and tourists are able to come once again and visit our beautiful island.
When we open up the borders, travel is going to be freer, and we're going to be able to travel between countries better.
I'm ready to reopen, to be reunited with my loved ones living abroad.
I'm ready to reopen.